You know that sound a server makes right before it dies? It's not a beep or a click. It's a change in the pitch of the fan, a breathless sort of wheeze, like a marathon runner about to collapse and vomit on their shoes. I know that sound better than I know the sound of my own mother's voice. I've been listening to it for 12 years. 12 years of sitting in a windowless room that smells like ozone and despair, keeping the digital heart of Vertex Solutions beating, while the suits upstairs play golf and talk about synergy and disruptive paradigms. I'm Samantha. I'm the person you call when your email won't load, when the database shits the bed, or when the CEO, let's call him Greg, accidentally downloads ransomware because he clicked a link promising him a free iPad. I'm the fixer. I'm the janitor of the internet. And for over a decade, I was the only thing standing between this company and total, unmitigated obsolescence. It started in a garage. Classic cliche, right? Greg, me, and two other guys who cashed out 5 years ago to raise llamas in Peru. Back then, it was exciting. We were pirates. We were building something real. I wrote the foundational code for our proprietary logistics platform, VectorStream, on a laptop that was missing the E key. I slept under a desk wrapped in a sleeping bag that smelled like Doritos and ambition. I bled for this place. Literally. I once sliced my hand open on a server rack during a thunderstorm in 2015 trying to reroute power before the backup batteries failed, and I just wrapped it in duct tape and kept typing. Fast forward to last Tuesday. I'm 42, I have carpal tunnel that flares up whenever it rains, and I'm sitting in a town hall meeting listening to Greg drone on about our record-breaking quarter. The room is filled with glass, chrome, and people who look like they were 3D printed in a catalog for business casual wear. I'm wearing a hoodie that's older than the intern sitting next to me. Greg is up there, flashing a smile that cost more than my Honda Civic, talking about how we did it. We landed the Amazon contract. We optimized the throughput. I'm looking around the room, and I realize we is doing a lot of heavy lifting for a guy whose primary contribution to the company lately is deciding which brand of sparkling water to stock in the break room. Look, before I get into how I burned this place to the ground, do me a solid. If you've ever been the only sober person at a drunk company, or if you've ever fixed a printer for someone who makes 10 times your salary, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It helps the algorithm know that we're not just cogs in the machine. Anyway, back to the train wreck. I was tired, not sleep tired, soul tired. The kind of tired where your bones feel like they're made of lead piping. I looked at the new crop of hires. They were shiny. They had titles like Junior DevOps Evangelist and Customer Success Ninja. They spent half the day making TikToks in the lounge and the other half asking me how to reset their passwords. And I sat there, the Director of Infrastructure, a title that came with zero equity and a comical lack of budget, thinking, I built the floor you're standing on. It wasn't just the work, it was the invisibility. I had become furniture. I was the legacy lady. I heard one of the new marketing guys call me that in the elevator. Oh, ask the legacy lady, she knows where the bodies are buried. He laughed. I didn't. He didn't know that I didn't just know where the bodies were buried. I was the one who dug the graves, threw the lime, and planted the petunias on top. That Tuesday meeting was the crack in the dam. Greg announced a cost of living adjustment freeze for senior staff. Tightening the belt, he called it lean operating principles. He said this while wearing a watch that could pay off my mortgage. I looked down at my phone, a notification from my bank. Auto payment, student loan. Balance remaining too damn much. I felt a twitch in my eye, the same twitch I get when a hard drive corrupts. I looked at Greg, beaming like a golden retriever who just learned how to open the fridge. I looked at the ninjas and evangelists nodding along, sipping their nitro brew coffee. And for the first time in 12 years, the loyalty that had been the structural steel of my life started to rust. It wasn't a loud moment. It wasn't a movie scene where I flipped a table. It was quiet. It was the silence of a fan stopping. It was the realization that I had spent a decade building a cage, locking myself inside, and handing the key to a guy who couldn't spell server if you spotted him the S and the R. I went back to my desk, a cubicle in the back corner, far away from the natural light reserved for the sales team, and I started looking at the code. My code. The vector stream core. It was beautiful in a utilitarian way. A sprawling, complex, messy masterpiece of logic, gates, and dependencies. I knew every line. I knew that if you deleted line 40,201, the entire shipping manifest module would start speaking Portuguese. I knew that the load balancer had a ghost in the machine that required a manual reboot every third Sunday at 2 a.m. I touched the screen. You and me, kid, I whispered. We're the only real things here. But the atmosphere was shifting. I could smell it. You know that scent right before a thunderstorm? Ozone and dirt? The office smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal. I just didn't know the size of the storm yet. I didn't know that the belt tightening was a lie. I didn't know that I was already walking dead. I stayed late that night. I always stayed late. The cleaners came through, vacuuming around my feet like I was a statue. I was patching a security vulnerability in the payment gateway that the rockstar developer they hired last month had left wide open. If I hadn't caught it, we would have leaked 10,000 credit card numbers by morning. I saved the patch. I committed the code. I watched the green status lights flicker on the dashboard. And I felt nothing. No pride, no relief, just a hollow echo where my career used to be. I walked out to the parking lot. It was raining. Of course it was raining. The city in November is basically just a wet gray towel slapped across your face. My car struggled to start. As I sat there, listening to the engine wheeze, I saw Greg's Porsche pull out of the reserved spot. He zoomed past me, splashing mud onto my windshield. He didn't even turn his head. That was the moment. That was the opening shotgun blast. I didn't know it yet, but the fuse had been lit. The bomb was sitting in a filing cabinet in my basement, gathering dust, waiting for the right hand to strike the match. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I thought about the freeze. I thought about the legacy lady. I thought about the 12 years of missed birthdays, canceled dates, and working through the flu. And I thought something has to break. I just didn't realize that something was going to be their entire reality. The next day, the universe decided to stop being subtle and just hit me with a brick. It was lunchtime. Usually, I eat at my desk, a sad rotation of turkey sandwiches and yogurt, but the HVAC in the server room was on the fritz, ironic, considering I feel like an overheated radiator half the time, and the noise was driving me insane. So, I went to the break room. The break room at Vertex Solutions is designed to look like a hip startup incubator, but it feels more like a waiting room for purgatory. There are beanbag chairs that nobody uses because they're impossible to get out of without looking like a struggling turtle, and a foosball table that gathers dust. I sat at one of the high-top tables, nursing a lukewarm coffee. 2 tables over, a couple of the new hires were huddled around a laptop. One was a guy named Tyler, 24 years old, wears beanies indoors, lists crypto enthusiast in his email signature. The other was a girl named Jessica, fresh out of a boot camp, sweet but roughly as technically proficient as a ham sandwich. They were whispering, but they had that loud whisper that young people do when they think they're being secretive but actually want everyone to know they have secrets. "Dude, I can't believe they started you at that," Jessica said, her eyes wide. "I negotiated hard," Tyler said, leaning back and popping a grape into his mouth. "I told them I had offers from Google, which, was technically true if you count a LinkedIn recruiter viewing my profile as an offer." He laughed. He spun his laptop around to show her something. "I wasn't trying to snoop, I really wasn't. But my eyes are trained to spot anomalies in code scrolling at 1,000 lines a minute. A PDF on a 15-inch retina display is practically a billboard. It was an offer letter. Vertex Solutions. Position, Junior Systems Architect." My eyes drifted to the bolded number at the bottom. Base salary, $145,000. The world stopped spinning for a second. The hum of the refrigerator, the chatter of the sales team, the rain against the window, it all just muted. $145,000. I make $125,000. I have been here for 12 years. I built the architecture that Tyler was being hired to maintain. I manage the entire infrastructure. I am on call 24/7/365. Tyler asks me which button turns on the projector, and he was making $20,000 more than me. I felt a physical blow to my chest. It wasn't just jealousy. It was humiliation. It was the mathematical quantification of exactly how little they respected me. To them, I was a depreciating asset. Tyler was the shiny new investment. I stood up. I didn't finish my coffee. I walked straight to the elevator, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Calm down," I told myself. "There's an explanation. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe that includes stock options." I marched into HR. The HR director is a woman named Linda. Linda is the kind of person who uses the phrase human capital without a hint of irony and decorates her office with inspirational quotes about grind and hustle written in gold cursive. She smiled when I walked in, that tight, practiced smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the facial equivalent of a 404-page not found. "Samantha, to what do I owe the pleasure?" She chirped, adjusting her glasses. I didn't sit down. "I need to talk about my compensation." "Linda," her smile faltered just for a microsecond before resetting. "Oh, is this about the freeze? Because as Greg explained in the town hall?" "No," I cut her off. My voice was steady, which surprised me. I felt like I was vibrating. "This is about the fact that I just inadvertently saw an offer letter for a junior systems architect, a role that reports to me, a role that pays $20,000 more than I make after 12 years. The room went quiet. The air conditioning vent hissed. Linda sighed, the sound of a parent dealing with a toddler who wants candy before dinner. She clasped her hands on her desk. "Samantha," she began, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness, "you have to understand how the market works. Tech salaries have exploded in the last 2 years. To attract new talent, we have to be competitive. We have to pay market rates." "I am the market," I snapped. "I built the platform. I know more about this system than anyone in this building combined." "Are you telling me my market rate is less than a kid who still uses password 123 for his login?" Linda's eyes hardened. The mask slipped. "Internal equity and external acquisition are different budgets, Samantha. You're on an existing compensation trajectory. Tyler is an acquisition, it's just how the industry works. So fix it, I said. Adjust my trajectory. Match it. I'm not asking for moonshot, Linda. I'm asking for parity with the entry-level guy I have to train. She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking. She looked at me with a look of pure, unadulterated dismissal. We can't just bump you 20 grand outside of a review cycle, Samantha. Especially not during a freeze. That's not policy. Policy? I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. I wrote the policy on data retention. I wrote the policy on disaster recovery. Can rewrite a salary policy. No, she said, cold, final. Then she delivered the line. The line that would echo in my head for the next 48 hours. The line that signed the death warrant for Vertex Solutions, though she didn't know it yet. She shrugged, picked up a pen, and looked at her paperwork. Look, Samantha, that's the market rate for new talent. You can accept it or... Well, you know your options. Accept it or leave. Accept it or leave. I looked at her. I looked at the live, laugh, love sign on her wall. I looked at the photos of her cats. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. The rage evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. It was like the moment you realize the logic puzzle isn't unsolvable. You were just looking at it from the wrong angle. Okay, I said. My voice was soft. Linda looked up, surprised by my sudden surrender. Okay, I understand, I said. Thank you for clarifying my position in the company, Linda. It's been very illuminating. I turned around and walked out. Samantha, she called after me, a hint of confusion in her voice. I didn't answer. I walked back to my desk. I sat down. The office was buzzing around me. Tyler was laughing at something on his phone. Greg was walking through the hallway, high-fiving the VP of sales. I wasn't Samantha the fixer anymore. I wasn't Samantha the loyalist. I was Samantha the ghost. I stared at my monitor. Accept it or leave. Challenge accepted, I whispered. Most people think quitting a job after 12 years requires a marching band or a nervous breakdown. They imagine you storming into the boss's office, throwing a resignation letter on the mahogany desk, and telling everyone to go to hell while We Are the Champions plays in the background. But when you're truly done, when the last thread of respect has been snipped by a pair of rusty corporate scissors, you don't scream, you vanish. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a fugue state. I answered emails. I closed tickets. I nodded at people in the hallway. I was running on autopilot, a shell script executing a loop while the main processor was busy formatting the hard drive. At 5 p.m., people started packing up. Hustle culture crowd usually stayed until 6:30 to be seen, but it was a Friday, and the allure of happy hour was stronger than the allure of pretending to work. I waited until 5:45 p.m. The office was thinning out. The cleaning crew was starting their rounds, the vacuum hum providing a mournful soundtrack to my departure. I didn't pack a box. Walking out with a cardboard box is a signal. It draws attention. Instead, I opened my backpack. I put in my personal hard drive, the one with my photos, my music, and my cheat sheets. I took my favorite mug, a chipped ceramic thing that said I turned coffee into code. I took the framed photo of my dog Buster, who passed away 3 years ago. I left everything else. The awards, the Employee of the Month plaques from 2014, the stress balls, the tangled nest of cables that I had been meaning to sort for 5 years. It were artifacts of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I opened my email client one last time. I drafted a message to Linda and Greg. Subject, resignation effective immediately. I am resigning from my position at Vertex Solutions. All company assets have been left at my desk. My badge is on the keyboard. Samantha, no regret to inform you. No thank you for the opportunity. No wishing you the best. Just the facts. Cold, hard data. I hovered the mouse over the send button. I looked around the office one last time. I looked at the server room door, my kingdom, my prison. I looked at the sticky note on my monitor that said, "Don't forget to breathe." I clicked send. Then I took my badge off my lanyard and set it gently on the keyboard. It made a soft clack. I stood up, slung my backpack over one shoulder, and walked to the elevator. I didn't look back. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the view of the gray carpet and the motivational posters, I felt a physical weight lift off my shoulders. It was dizzying. I felt lightheaded, like I had surfaced too quickly from a deep dive. The drive home was a blur. I didn't turn on the radio. I just listened to the tires on the wet pavement. Accept it or leave. Accept it or leave. When I got to my house, a modest bungalow that I was still paying off because I hadn't been making market rate, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of cheap red wine, and stood in the dark. Now what? Panic started to creep in at the edges. I had no job. I had meager savings. I was 42 in an industry that fetishizes youth. Had I just made a catastrophic mistake? Should I have swallowed my pride, taken the insult, and kept the steady paycheck? No. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like vinegar and regret. I wandered into my home office/spare bedroom. It was a mess of old computer parts and boxes I hadn't unpacked since the Obama administration. In the corner, shoved behind a broken printer, was a filing cabinet, a beige, dented metal monolith from the early days. Something tugged at my memory. A conversation from a decade ago. A late night at a Denny's with Greg and the other co-founders, back when we were all friends. Back when equity was just a word we threw around like confetti. I remember signing something. It was the panic of 2011. The company was about to go under. Investors were pulling out. Greg was sweating through his shirts. I had threatened to leave then too. I had an offer from IBM. They begged me to stay. They couldn't pay me more cash, so they offered something else. I put down my wine glass. I walked over to the filing cabinet and yanked the bottom drawer open. Groaned in protest. Files, tax returns from 2009, warranties for appliances I didn't own anymore, a manual for a VCR, and there in the back a blue plastic binder, labeled Vertex Legal/Founding. My hands were shaking slightly as I pulled it out. I blew the dust off the cover. It swirled in the dim light of the street lamp outside the window. I opened it. The paper was yellowing. The font was Times New Roman, drafted by a lawyer who probably charged by the comma. Founders' Participation Agreement. I flipped past the standard non-compete clauses, which were unenforceable anyway. I flipped past the confidentiality agreements. I stopped at Section 8.4, Intellectual Property and Residual Rights. I started reading. The legalese was dense, tangled like spaghetti code, but I speak logic, I speak syntax. And as I parsed the sentences, my breath hitched in my throat. In the event of the undersigned separation from the company, barring termination for cause, defined as criminal negligence or theft, the company retains a limited revocable license to utilizing the core infrastructure architecture, defined in Appendix A, revocable. Said license is contingent upon the continued consent of the founder, Samantha X, or a buyout of the intellectual property rights valued at. I flipped the page. Failure to secure consent or buyout results in the immediate reversion of all rights to the underlying source code and architecture to the founder. I sat back on my heels on the dusty carpet. They hadn't just hired me as an employee. To keep me from going to IBM, they had codified me as a technology partner with ownership of the code I wrote. And because they were broke back then, they didn't buy the rights, they licensed them from me. License that was contingent on my employment or my consent. I had just resigned. I wasn't terminated for cause, which meant the license was void. Which meant VectorStream, the platform that processed 80% of their revenue, the platform I built, the platform Tyler was supposed to maintain, didn't belong to Vertex Solutions anymore. It belonged to me. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf realizing the sheep gate was unlocked. Accept it or leave, I whispered to the empty room. Be careful what you wish for, Linda. Flashback. 2011, 3:00 a.m. The Denny's off I-71 smells like maple syrup and bleach. The fluorescent lights are humming, a sound that drills right into your frontal lobe. Greg looks like he hasn't slept in a week. His hair is greasy, his eyes are bloodshot, and he's shredding a paper napkin into tiny, snowy piles on the table. Sam, you can't go to IBM, he says. His voice is cracking. If you leave, the beta launch fails. If the beta fails, the investors walk. If the investors walk, I'm living in my parents' basement again. I'm eating a moons over my hammy, trying to ignore the desperation radiating off him like heat waves. Greg, IBM is offering me health insurance and a 401k. You're offering me pizza and promises. I can't eat promises. I'll make it right, he pleads. He slides a document across the sticky table. Look, my uncle's lawyer drafted this. It's insurance for you. I look at the paper. It's thick. What is this? It says you own the engine, Greg says, leaning in intense. The core code, the vector protocol, you own it. We're just borrowing it. As long as you're with us, we use it. If we ever screw you over, or if we make it big and try to push you out, you take your ball and go home. It's your guarantee that we can't survive without you. I looked at him. He was my friend then. I believed him. I thought he was protecting me. I didn't realize he was just desperate enough to sign away the kingdom because he didn't think the kingdom would ever be worth anything. Okay, I said. I signed it with a cheap blue ballpoint pen. I'll stay back to the present. I was staring at that signature. The ink had faded slightly, but it was there. Samantha Miller, and next to it, Gregory Vance, CEO. I wasn't a lawyer. I needed to be sure. I needed a shark. I grabbed my phone. It was 9:00 p.m. on a Friday. Most lawyers are 3 martinis deep by now, but I knew one who wasn't, David. We dated for 6 months in 2016. It didn't work out. He was married to his firm, and I was married to my servers, but we stayed friends. He was a contract law specialist with a mean streak and a hatred for corporate bullying that rivaled my own. I took a picture of the relevant clauses and texted them to him. Me, hypothetical question. If I signed this in 2011 and just quit today, what happens to the company's IP? 3 dots appeared immediately, then stopped, then appeared again. My phone rang. Sam, David's voice was crisp, awake. Tell me you have the original. I'm holding it, I said. Why? Because if this is real, and if the definitions in Appendix are as broad as I think they are, you don't just own the IP. You own their balls in a vice. I felt a shiver of adrenaline. Explain. It's a reversion clause, David said, sounding almost giddy. It's rare and it's stupid dangerous for a company. Basically, they didn't buy the work for hire. They licensed it. The license is conditional on your employment. Employment ends, license ends, immediately. The use of that code after your resignation is willful copyright infringement. And since it's core infrastructure, they can't run the platform without it. I finished. They can't even turn the lights on without it. David laughed. Sam, did they fire you? I resigned. Accept it or leave, they said. Oh, this is beautiful, David whispered. This is art. Sam, listen to me. Do not talk to them. Do not answer calls. I'm coming over. We need to draft a notice. Cease and desist that will make their general counsel wet the bed. David, I said, looking at the rain streaking the window. I don't just want money. I know, he said. You want blood. I want them to understand, I corrected. I want them to know exactly what market rate looks like when the market is me. David arrived 40 minutes later with a bottle of scotch and a laptop. We sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m. We went through the agreement line by line, cross-referenced it with the current code base. The vector protocol, the thing I wrote in the garage, was still the backbone of everything. Every API call, every database query, every login request passed through my code. They had built a skyscraper on top of my foundation, and they had forgotten that I owned the concrete. By the time the sun started to bleach the sky gray, we had a document ready. It was a single page, simple, brutal. Notice of revocation of license and demand to cease and desist. 2. Vertex Solutions, Inc. Atten, Gregory Vance, CEO. Pursuant to Section 8.4 of the Founders Participation Agreement, dated August 12, 2011, you are hereby notified that the license to utilize the core infrastructure architecture is revoked effective immediately upon the resignation of Samantha Miller. Any continued use of said intellectual property constitutes theft. David leaned back and rubbed his eyes. You know what's going to happen when you drop this, right? It's going to be chaos. They're going to lose their minds. I took a sip of the scotch. It burned, warming my chest. They told me to accept it, I said. I'm just following instructions. I looked at the clock. 5:30 a.m. I need to deliver it, I said, before they get in. I'll drive, David said. I stood up. I felt awake, more awake than I had felt in years. The fatigue was gone, replaced by a cold, vibrating purpose. I wasn't just a disgruntled employee anymore. I was a structural failure event. I was a natural disaster. Let's go to work, I said. The Vertex Solutions parking lot is eerie at 6:45 a.m. It's a vast expanse of wet asphalt, empty save for a few overnight delivery trucks and the security patrol car that sleeps in the back corner. The building itself looks like a sleek silver tombstone rising out of the mist. David idled his Audi at the curb. You sure you don't want me to serve them properly? Courier signature required? No, I said, staring at the glass doors. I want to do this. I want him to find it on his chair. It's personal. All right, David nodded. I'll be here. If the cops show up, say nothing. I grabbed the thick manila envelope. Inside was the photocopy of the 2011 agreement, with the relevant clauses highlighted in neon yellow and the cease and desist notice printed on David's heavy, intimidating legal letterhead. I still had my badge. I hadn't deactivated it yet. IT Security 101, revoke access immediately upon termination. But Tyler, the new system architect, probably didn't know how to run the termination script, and Linda in HR wouldn't process the paperwork until Monday morning. Their incompetence was my key. I walked to the side entrance. I held my breath as I tapped the badge against the reader. Beep, green light, the lock clicked. Idiots, I whispered. I slipped inside. The building was silent. The air was still, smelling of industrial cleaner and stale carpet. The emergency lights cast long, creepy shadows down the hallways. It felt like walking through the Titanic before it hit the iceberg. I took the stairs to the executive floor. The elevator was too loud. I wanted to be a ghost. On the third floor, the carpet changed from gray loop pile to plush navy blue. The walls were adorned with abstract art that looked like paint splatters and cost more than my car. I walked past Linda's office. Her door was closed. I imagined her in there, dreaming of compliant employees and cost-saving measures. I reached the corner office, Greg's office. The door was unlocked. Greg never locked his office inside the building because he liked the open-door policy aesthetic, even though he was rarely there. I pushed the door open. The room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the highway. A mahogany desk the size of a landing strip. A Herman Miller Aeron chair that probably had seat warmers. I walked around the desk. I looked at the photos on his shelf. Greg shaking hands with politicians. Greg on a boat. Greg with his new wife, a woman 10 years younger than me who looked like she was made of porcelain. There were no photos of the garage. No photos of the nights we ordered cheap pizza and debugged code until our eyes bled. He had erased that history. He had erased us. I looked at his computer. It was asleep. I tapped the spacebar. The login screen flickered to life. Password hint, favorite vacation spot. I knew it was Maldives or maybe Aspen. It didn't matter. I wasn't here to hack him. I was here to evict him. I placed the envelope squarely in the center of his chair. It was impossible to miss. It was a physical object in a digital world, a paper bomb sitting on black mesh. I took a Sharpie from my pocket. On the front of the envelope, I wrote 2 words in bold block letters. Market rate. I capped the marker. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I stood there for a second. I felt a strange vibration in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was sorrow. No, it was grief. I was grieving the 12 years I poured into this place. I was grieving the friend I used to have. But grief, when compressed under enough pressure, turns into diamond-hard anger. Goodbye, Greg, I whispered. I turned and walked out. I retraced my steps, down the plush hallway, down the stairs, out the side door. The cool morning air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It tasted of rain and exhaust, but to me it tasted like freedom. I got back into David's car. Done? He asked. Done, I said. What now? I checked my watch. 7 o'clock a.m. Greg usually rolled in around 7:15 to get a head start, check his stocks, and drink espresso. Now, I said, buckling my seatbelt. We wait for the scream. I pulled out my phone. I opened the remote admin app, backdoor tool I had built for myself years ago to monitor server health from home. It wasn't officially logged, and it bypassed the main gateway. I watched the server status lights. All green. Not for long, I thought. Because in that envelope was also a small detail David had pointed out. The founder's consent wasn't just a legal concept. In the original build, I had hard-coded a dead man's switch, a digital handshake that required a specific authorization token. I tokened to renew the license keys for the core modules every 30 days. I hadn't renewed it this month, and without my employment status active in the HR database, which linked to the token generator, the next automated check would fail. The check ran at 8 o'clock a.m. daily. I had about 50 minutes before the company turned into a pumpkin. Breakfast? David asked. Waffles, I said. I feel like celebrating. 7:18 a.m. David and I were at a diner down the street, close enough to see the Vertex building but far enough to be anonymous. I had a plate of waffles in front of me. I hadn't eaten since the offer letter incident. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Who is this? Why is there an envelope on my chair? It was Greg. He didn't have my number saved anymore? Ouch. Or maybe he just deleted it to make room for his country club contacts. Didn't reply. I poured syrup on my waffles. 7:24 a.m. my phone buzzed again. Is this a joke, Samantha? I saw the signature. Pick up the phone. He had opened it. He had read the cover letter. He was probably staring at the cease and desist in bold font right now, his face turning that specific shade of plum he gets when the valet takes too long with his car. 7:30 a.m. David's phone rang. He looked at the ID and grinned. It's their general counsel. Alan, we went to law school together. He's a weasel. David let it go to voicemail. Let them sweat, he said. 8 o'clock a.m. the witching hour. I opened my laptop on the diner table, tethered to my phone. I pulled up the external status dashboard, the public-facing one that shows system uptime for clients. Vector stream status, operational, latency 12 ms. I took a bite of bacon. Wait for it, I said. 8:02 a.m. the dashboard flickered. Latency 450 ms. Warning, license verification pending. Here we go, I whispered. Inside the building, I knew exactly what was happening. The master control server had just pinged the authentication database. It asked, is user Samantha active? Y/N. The database, which I had disconnected myself from mentally but not yet digitally, would check the HR flag. But wait, I had resigned, but they hadn't processed it. So technically, I was still active? No, the dead man's switch wasn't linked to HR. It was linked to a manual input I did every month. A command line script I ran called Verify Integrity SH. It was part of my maintenance routine. I hadn't run it yesterday. The server panicked. Error 804, founder token missing. Action, revert to trial mode. Trial mode restrictions, max connections equals 5. Vertex Solutions serves 4,000 simultaneous enterprise connections. 8:05 a.m. vector stream status, degraded. Error, connection refused. My phone exploded. Text from Tyler, the new guy. Hey Sam, system is acting weird. Says license expired. Lol, can you fix? Text from Linda, Samantha, we need to talk immediately. Calls from Greg. 5 in a row. I watched the dashboard. It turned from yellow to red. Status, critical failure. Trial mode had kicked in. It was bottlenecking the entire traffic of a logistics company down to a trickle. Trucks were stopping at gates in New Jersey. Warehouses in Texas were going dark. The API calls were bouncing back with a message I had hard-coded 12 years ago as a joke. Insert coin to continue. 8:15 a.m. David checked his voicemail. He put it on speaker. Alan's voice was high-pitched, frantic. David, it's Alan. We have a situation. Your client dropped a bomb on Greg's chair, and now the system is locking up. Tell her to turn it back on. This is extortion. We'll sue you into the ground. Call me back. David laughed. Extortion? It's copyright enforcement. They're infringing on your IP, Sam. 8:30 a.m. The chaos was spilling out of the digital world. I saw lights flickering on the third floor of the Vertex building. I saw people running past the windows. I imagined the IT pit. Tyler was probably smashing keys, trying to restart the servers. But he couldn't. The source code was locked. The compiler would refuse to build without the founder token. He was locked out of the engine room, and I was eating waffles. They're going to try to bypass it, I said. Tyler will try to hack the license check. Can he? David asked. If he was good, maybe in a week. But he's a crypto enthusiast who copies code from Stack Overflow. He won't even find the file for 3 days. 8:45 a.m. my phone rang again. It wasn't Greg. It was the frantic, breathless number of the IT help desk line. I answered, "Hello, Samantha. Oh my God, thank God, it was Jessica, the other new hire." She sounded like she was crying. "Everything is down, everything. The dashboard says license revoked." Greg is screaming at everyone. Tyler is throwing up in the trash can. "What do we do, Jessica?" I said calmly. "I don't work there anymore." "What? But you have to fix it. The clients are calling." "Amazon is calling." "I'm sorry, Jessica. That sounds like a market rate problem. Have Tyler handle it. He's the architect, right? He doesn't know what to do. He says the code is encrypted." "It is," I said. "Tell Greg to check his chair." "The solution is in the envelope." I hung up. I looked at David. "Amazon is calling." David whistled. "That's millions of dollars an hour." "Yep," I said. Expensive morning for Greg. The server dashboard was now a solid, unblinking crimson bar. Status, system offline. I felt a pang of guilt, not for Greg, but for the code. It was my baby and I had just induced a seizure. But then I remembered the offer letter. I remembered accept it or leave. I took a sip of coffee. I'm ready for the negotiation now. The phone rang at 9:15 a.m. It was Greg's personal cell again. I let it ring 3 times. 1, 2, 3. I picked up. "This is Samantha. What the hell have you done?" Greg screamed. "No hello, no good morning. Just raw, unfiltered panic. Turn it back on. Right now, we are losing $30,000 a minute." "I haven't done anything, Greg," I said, my voice smooth as glass. I resigned. As per the founder's participation agreement of 2011, my license to Vertex Solutions was contingent on my employment. Since I am no longer employed, the license is revoked. The system is simply obeying the law. "The law? You sabotaged us. You planted a virus." "It's not a virus," I corrected. "It's a digital rights management protocol. You know, like how you can't watch Netflix if you stop paying the subscription? You stopped paying the subscription, Greg. I didn't stop paying, you quit. And you told me to accept it or leave." I left. This is the consequence of leaving. There was a silence on the other end. I could hear heavy breathing. I could hear shouting in the background. Someone yelled, "Tell them we're experiencing a solar flare interference." "Make something up." Greg's voice dropped. He shifted tactics. The anger was replaced by a slippery, desperate charm. "Sam, come on, this is crazy. We've known each other for 12 years. We built this place. Your family?" "Family?" I let out a dry chuckle. "Family doesn't pay the new guy 20 grand more than the person who built the house, Greg. Family doesn't tell you to accept it when you ask for fair pay. Is that what this is about? The money? Fine, I'll match it. I'll give you the $145K. Just come back in and type in the code. We can fix this in 5 minutes. It's not about the salary anymore, Greg," I said. "That offer expired yesterday at 2 p.m. when Linda laughed at me." "Then what do you want? $150K? $160K? Name your price." "Sam, just stop the bleeding." I looked at David. He held up a finger. "Don't give a number yet." "My lawyer has outlined the terms in the envelope," I said. "This isn't an employment negotiation. This is an IP acquisition. You are currently using my property without a license. If you want the platform back, you have to buy the rights." "Permanently buy the rights?" Greg sounded choked. "The agreement says fair market value." "Exactly," I said, "and right now. The market value of the only software that keeps your company from imploding is very high. You're blackmailing me. I'm exercising my contractual rights." "You signed it, Greg, in the Denny's. Remember? You said it was my insurance." He stuttered. He remembered. "I'm hanging up now, Greg. Have your legal team call David. His number is on the letterhead. Do not call me again unless you want to add harassment to the lawsuit." "Sam, wait, you can't." I ended the call. My hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally standing up. For 12 years, I had been the doormat. Today, I was the door, and the door was locked. He offered to match the salary, I told David. "Cute," David said. "He thinks he can put the genie back in the bottle for peanuts." "What's the real number?" I asked. David pulled out a notepad. He had been doing math while I was on the phone. "Okay, revenue is roughly $50 million a year, right? The platform controls 80% of that. If they have to rebuild it from scratch, it will take—" "What? 6 months, at least," I said. "And they don't have the talent to do it. Tyler would take 2 years just to understand the database schema. So 6 months of lost revenue is $20 million, plus reputation damage, plus lawsuits from clients for breach of contract. Basically, if the system is down for more than 48 hours, the company is insolvent." David circled a number on the pad. "We ask for $3 million, David said. "Cash, buyout, and full recognition of your patent rights." $3 million, it was an unfathomable amount of money. It was retire to a cabin and never touch a server again money. "Do you think they'll pay it?" "They have to," David said, "or they die." 10:30 a.m. David's phone rang. It was Alan, the general counsel. "David," Alan sounded tired. "You've reviewed the document. It's solid. We missed it during the due diligence for the Series B funding. We screwed up." "I know you did," David said pleasantly. "Greg is frantic. The board is calling him. What do you want to resolve this?" "Check your email," David said. "I just sent the term sheet." We waited. The diner was getting busy with the lunch rush. The smell of burgers filled the air. I felt like I was in a bubble, separated from the normal world by the magnitude of what I was doing. I checked the dashboard again. Status, offline, last attempted access, 34,201 failed logins. They were panicked. They were trying to brute force the admin password. It wouldn't work. The lock wasn't on the door, the lock was in the foundation. They're reading it, David said, checking his email tracking. Now we see if they blink, I said. The reply from Vertex Legal came in. It wasn't an acceptance. It was a threat wrapped in a settlement offer. While we dispute the validity of the 2011 agreement and reserve the right to litigate for damages caused by unauthorized code sabotage, Vertex Solutions is prepared to offer Miss Miller a severance package of $250,000 and a consulting contract for 6 months at her previous salary to restore system functionality. Sabotage, I scoffed, are still trying to frame it as a hack. They have to, David said, scanning the email. They need to save face for the insurance company. If they admit they just forgot to secure the IP rights, their errors and omissions insurance won't cover the losses. $250,000, I said, that's 2 years of salary. Yesterday I would have cried with joy. Today, David said, it's an insult. It's 1% of the damage they're taking. He typed a reply. Settlement offer. Rejected, the term sabotage is defamatory. Miss Miller's code is functioning exactly as licensed. The license has expired. The buyout price is $3.2 million. Price increases by $100,000 for every hour the system remains offline. Clock starts now. Aggressive, I said, I like it. 1:00 p.m. the news broke. A tech blog, The Daily Stack, ran a headline, Logistics Giant Vertex Solutions Dark, Hack or Insider Threat. Someone had leaked it, probably an angry client. The article quoted an anonymous source saying, nobody knows what's going on. The CEO is locking himself in his office. I scrolled through the comments. User Tech Bro 99 sounds like a disgruntled sysadmin. Always pay your IT people, folks. User Salty Dev bet they didn't document their legacy code. RIP, I wanted to reply, not disgruntled, just expensive. 2:30 p.m. my phone rang. A known number, area code was New York. That's the board, David said. The venture capital firm, I answered. Miss Miller, a woman's voice. Sharp, authoritative. This is Alina Vance, chair of the board, Greg's aunt, the money behind the operation, the real power. Hello, Alina, cut the crap, Samantha. Greg is an idiot, we all know that. But you are burning down an asset that is worth $50 million. Why? Because it's my asset, Alina. And Greg told me it was worthless yesterday when he refused to pay me market rate. This is about a raise. It started about a raise. Now it's about ownership. I own the engine. You're driving the car. If you want the engine back, you pay for it. We can sue you. We can tie you up in court for 10 years. You'll be bankrupt before you see a dime. Maybe, I said. I felt a surge of cold confidence. But the system is down now. Amazon leaves in 2 hours if the trucks don't move. You'll lose your biggest client. You'll lose the quarter. You might lose the company. Can you afford to wait for court, Alina? Silence. She knew I was right. In the tech world, downtime is death. Court takes years. Server outages kill you in days. Greg mishandled this, she said, her voice tighter. He underestimated your value. He told me to leave, I said. I left. If we pay, she said, if we pay the $3 million. Turn it back on? Immediately? Instantly, I said. I have the token ready. And you sign over all rights? Full transfer of IP? Yes, you buy the house, you get the keys. But I want one more thing. What? I want a public statement from Greg, admitting that the outage was due to a lapse in executive management regarding intellectual property retention. I want my name cleared. It wasn't a hack. It was a contract dispute. Alina sighed. Greg will never agree to that. It's suicide for his career. Then I guess he better learn how to code, I said. Give us an hour, she said. 3:30 p.m. the deadline was approaching. The price was about to go up by $100K. David and I had moved from the diner to his office. We were sitting in a conference room with a view of the city. I looked out at the skyline. Somewhere out there, trucks were idling. Warehouses were silent. I felt a twinge of fear. Was I pushing too hard? Would they choose to burn it all down rather than pay? They're not irrational, David said, reading my mind. They're capitalists. The math is on your side. $3 million is cheaper than zero. 3:58 p.m. an email arrived from Alina Vance. Subject, agreement. Attached was a transfer agreement. The amount was filled in, $3,200,000, and a draft press release. Vertex Solutions regrets the service interruption caused by an administrative error in renewing core infrastructure licensing. We have reached an amicable resolution with our founding technology partner, Samantha Miller. It wasn't a groveling apology, but it was an admission. It was enough. They signed it, David said, pointing to the digital signature at the bottom. The wire transfer is pending. I stared at the screen. The numbers looked fake. Too many zeros, do it. David said, verify the wire, then turn the key. We called the bank. The wire was there, cleared, real money. I opened my laptop. I opened the terminal. I typed in the command, sshadmin at vectorstream core password, m@archetr at t2023. I had changed it this morning. The terminal blinked green. Access granted. I ran the script. Renew license sh token equals Samantha exit protocol duration equals permanent. The screen scrolled text rapidly. Verifying token, valid. Restoring core modules, success. Lifting connection limits, success. I switched to the public dashboard. The red bar flickered, then turned yellow. Then a beautiful, solid green. Status, operational. I sat back in the leather chair. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 12 years. It's up, I said. David poured 2 glasses of the cheap office whiskey. To market rates, he said. To market rates, I replied. The wire hit my account fully the next morning. It's a strange feeling to look at a banking app and see a number that looks like a phone number. I didn't go back to the office to get my box. I told them to burn it. I didn't want the stress balls or the tangled cables. I didn't even want the mug. The fallout was swift, but not in the way you'd expect. Greg didn't get fired immediately. Corporate boards are slow beasts, but he was neutered. Alina put a co-CEO in place within a week, a shark from New York who specialized in restructuring. Greg was moved to a purely ceremonial role. He kept his office, but he lost his power. He spent his days golfing and trying to convince people that the outage was actually a stress test he planned. Nobody believed him. Tyler, the crypto kid? He quit 2 weeks later. Turns out, trying to maintain a system that had just almost died was too much stress for someone whose main skill was minting NFTs. Linda in HR? She's still there. Cockroaches survive nuclear blasts, but I heard through the grapevine that the salary freeze was miraculously lifted the week after I left. They gave everyone a 15% bump. They were terrified of who else might have a forgotten agreement in a drawer somewhere. As for me, I paid off my student loans in one click. That felt better than sex. I paid off the house. I bought a new car, not a Porsche, just a Subaru that starts when it rains. And then, I did nothing. For 3 months, I just slept. I woke up at 10 a.m., I drank coffee on my porch. I read books that weren't about coding, I healed. The carpal tunnel went away. The twitch in my eye stopped. I realized that for 12 years I had defined myself by how useful I was to people who didn't care about me. I was a tool in their box. When the tool spoke up, they tried to hammer it down, so the tool dismantled the house. I'm not a hero. I caused a lot of chaos. Truck drivers got stuck in Jersey for a day. Clients lost money. It wasn't clean, but it was fair. 6 months later, I got a LinkedIn notification. It was from Jessica, the crying girl from the help desk. Hey Sam, just wanted to say, thanks after you left and after the raises, things got better. But mostly, thank you for showing us that we don't have to just take it. I just negotiated a promotion. I used your line, accept it or leave. They accepted it. I smiled and closed the laptop. I was sitting in a small bar in Key West. I had decided to take a permanent vacation. The air smelled like salt and lime, not ozone and despair. The bartender, a guy named Mike who looked like he had lived 3 lifetimes, slid a drink toward me. What's that? I asked. House special, he said. On the house. You look like you're celebrating something. I took a sip. It was cold and sweet. I am, I said. What's the occasion? I retired. I said, from the fixing business. Nice, Mike said. What did you fix? I thought about the server room, the blinking lights, the panic, the envelope on the chair. I fixed a glitch, I said. Evaluation error. I looked out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and purple, colors that no monitor could ever reproduce. I wasn't Samantha the legacy lady anymore. I wasn't the ghost. I was just Samantha. And for the first time in my life, I was operating at 100% efficiency. I took another sip. Market rate, I whispered to the sunset. Finally. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.